Oleg stood at the window of his spacious apartment on the 25th floor of one of the city's most elite skyscrapers. He had always loved these moments when he could stop time for a few minutes and, looking at the city, let his thoughts wander in the distant expanse. He had a lifetime of ups and downs, successes and disappointments behind him. He was one of the most successful businessmen in the country, owning several large companies, but over the past month his life had changed, all because of an illness that made him take a break and focus on his health. More than once Oleg woke up in the middle of the night, feeling a heaviness in his chest, not understanding what was happening to his body. The doctors reassured him, but it didn't lessen his fear. He refused hospitalization for a long time, not recognizing himself as weak, until one day he found himself in the hospital with a diagnosis that was a real blow to him. Even so, his desire to get back to business and regain his routine was stronger than his fear. Today he was discharged and returned to work. Important decisions awaited his company, which he had built from scratch, and he couldn't afford to rest any longer. The hospital was a quiet and peaceful place, but every morning was a new challenge for Oleg. On this day, as he was about to leave its walls, he suddenly felt anxious. It was probably the last moment when he could stop and think about how his life would change in the coming hours. However, the thought of being late for an important meeting kept him on his toes. All the strategic plans were already lined up in his head, all the decisions he had to make. Business doesn't tolerate pauses, and his teams would be without him. Anna, the nurse who had cared for him in his last days, was a woman he had crossed paths with more than once in the hospital corridors. She was quiet, almost invisible, but always attentive. Most of the time she just made sure everything was okay and didn't interfere with his life. But today her face was unusually serious, and her gaze, directed at Oleg, was full of concern. "Oleg, you shouldn't go out today," she said, her voice low and a little anxious. "You have just been through an ordeal, and your body has not yet recovered. I know you need to get back into action, but you should wait a little while." Oleg turned to her in surprise. He knew she was a good nurse, but her words sounded too forceful to be mere concern for his condition. He had always been a man who never agreed with the opinions of others if they went against his own goals. "Anna, I appreciate your concern, but I can't just sit at home. There are important events at my company right now. I have to be on site. I have an executive meeting scheduled, and I can't miss it. This is a crucial moment for us, and I won't let anyone hold me up." Anna was silent for a few seconds. Her gaze became even more attentive, as if she was trying to analyze his every gesture, every word. "Oleg, I understand you," she said at last, "but you risk not only your health. These decisions can wait. I ask you to think again before going to the meeting." Oleg hesitated. He saw that her words were not just an urgent request. There was something more in her voice. Perhaps she knew something the doctors hadn't told him, but he had long been a man used to trusting only his own judgment and his own strength. "Anna, I understand your concerns, but I have to go. I can't afford not to be there. My team is waiting for me, and they're relying on me." Anna stepped forward and her eyes met his gaze. She didn't seem as calm as usual. A shadow of worry slid into her eyes, and her voice was softer but still insistent. "You know this can be about more than just business. You're risking your health, Oleg. And if you lose more, I don't want you to regret it. These things are important to realize before it's too late." Oleg froze for a moment. These words seemed strange and alerted him. He had always been confident in his own abilities and rarely listened to other people's advice, but there was something in her eyes that made him feel his confidence begin to falter. He could see that she was genuinely worried about him, and it made him wonder. "I don't know what you mean, Anna," he said, holding back his irritation. "But I can't afford to think about my health when my business is on the verge of such a change. I can't stand by." Anna did not answer at once. She took a step back and seemed to decide she had said all she could. Her gaze grew a little softer, but there was a slight smile on her face. "I know you'll decide for yourself," she said quietly. "I just want you to know that you can always wait a little longer. Sometimes it's important to slow down to avoid big losses." Oleg nodded, and sensing her insistence, quickly left the hospital, but those last words of Anna did not leave his thoughts. He didn't know what they meant, but he felt that they could have an impact on him in the coming hours. In that moment, more than ever before, he wondered, what if he had truly underestimated his own strength and the consequences of his decision? Only 2 hours had passed, and the events that were unfolding before him were completely unexpected. The fact that he hadn't listened to Anna had changed the course of his life and business, and he soon realized that her warning was not just a concern, but some kind of sign that he had ignored. Oleg sat in his expensive office, waiting for a meeting with the management of the company. Everything was ready, a plan of action, prepared reports, a clear understanding of what he would have to say. He was more confident in himself and his success than ever. Over the past few years, the company has expanded its influence considerably, and he was not only its founder, but also its undisputed leader. An uneasiness began to build inside him, however, and it hadn't left him since he'd gotten out of the hospital. Pensively looking at his watch, Oleg could not get rid of the feeling that something was wrong. He had always been a man of action, and procrastination was not in his habits. Today, however, at this moment when the meeting was near, the anxiety was growing stronger by the moment. He mentally tried to go back to his conversation with Anna, but all her words were lost in his desire to be first in everything. Why not just do business as usual? Why not leave all those worries for later? There was a knock at the door, and Oleg perked up. It was his assistant, Mikhail, who was always there, ready to help. Mikhail looked tense, which was not characteristic of him. He entered the office and, without waiting for an invitation, began to speak. "Oleg, we have a slight change of plan. Including a new partner, we'll need to meet soon." Oleg nodded, but his thoughts were occupied not with partners and deals, but with a strange feeling that was becoming more and more clear with each passing hour. He realized that something important was happening, something that would probably affect his future. "Who is it?" he finally asked, raising his eyes from the papers. Mikhail took out his laptop and opened several tabs on the screen. "This is a woman named Rose. Well, let's say she finds unconventional approaches in business. I can't explain everything to you, but it seems she wants to invest in our project. We need to be ready." "Rose?" Oleg repeated, not hiding his surprise. "Where did you find her? I have not heard of this woman. Why is she interested in our project?" Mikhail paused a little, choosing words. "I don't know. She makes very big bets on projects we haven't worked with yet, but she has resources. I'm honestly surprised she hasn't made an official offer yet. And yes, she's on the phone now, waiting for your answer." Oleg thought for a moment. Throughout his career, he was used to solving issues quickly, but now it seemed to him that something was wrong with this proposal. Why this particular woman, with her mysterious approach and unknown past? He felt a question hanging in the air that he could not yet formulate, but which tugged his thoughts in the direction of anxiety. "Let her come in," he said, showing no clear excitement. "We need to deal with this matter." A few minutes later, the office door opened and a woman entered. Rose was tall, with straight dark hair, neatly styled, and a stern but confident look. She was dressed in a dark suit which emphasized her business style and at the same time made her stand out among the others. Her confident gait and almost imperious look said that she was not used to rejection. Oleg stood up, looking at her gaze. He noticed how her eyes quickly assessed every detail of his office, as if she was not just looking, but reading the information. Rose's gaze was cold, but there was power in that coldness. He sensed that she not only had the resources, but also the experience to sway the course of any business. "Oleg," she began, and her voice was steady but firm. "I've heard about your company and your successes. My goal is not just to invest in your projects, but to become a partner in taking the company to the next level. We could work together, but for that I need to make sure you understand what you want to achieve." Oleg felt his breathing become a little faster. He didn't know what it was in her words that hurt him, but it was obvious she was playing some kind of game of her own. He was well aware of how important every detail was in a negotiation, but right now he was facing a woman who clearly knew how to read people. She didn't ask questions, didn't show much emotion, but her presence became more and more powerful and penetrating. "My goals are clear, Rose," Oleg said, trying not to show how he felt her influence. "We are looking for strategic partnerships that can help us expand our influence. If your ideas align with our vision, we are ready to collaborate." Rose took a step forward, sat down at the table, and placed the documents in front of her. She didn't move quickly, but there was a certain purpose in her actions that made it clear she wasn't afraid to take risks. "I'm not interested in just another deal, Oleg," she said, and her eyes narrowed slightly. "I want to make sure that our interests are aligned. You have ambition, but that's not all. I need to be sure you can keep your company afloat, even when things get unstable. We both know you can't afford to delay." Her words seemed to sharpen his sense of unease. Oleg sensed that her cold confidence was not just a challenge, but a reminder that in this business you have to be prepared for any turn of events. He realized that her offer could be profitable, but this time he needed to go ahead with extreme caution. "We won't hesitate, Rose," he said, smiling demurely. "I am ready to discuss all the terms and guarantee that your interest will be protected." Rose glanced back at him, and her expression softened a little. She stood up and extended her hand as if to confirm their meeting and the cooperation that had begun. "That's great, Oleg. Let's get to work." Oleg felt the tension recede, but at the same time the feeling of anxiety did not leave him. He knew that this acquaintance with Rose and her proposal would change not only the course of his company, but also his personal life. With every word she said, he felt all of his earlier certainties begin to falter. Something was wrong with this proposal, and he knew it. After Rose left, Oleg sat in his chair for a while, unable to get rid of the strange feeling her appearance had left inside. He wasn't just concerned, he was shocked. This woman had her own agenda, her own game, and he sensed that she was not as simple as she appeared at first glance. Her composure and confidence were astounding. Time passed, and he kept trying to figure out what was behind her proposal and how it would all relate to his future. The next morning, after a rather restless night, when Oleg again plunged into the worries of business and corporate plans, his thoughts again returned to Rose. Inwardly, he knew that he could not pass by her proposal, but he was not sure of his decision. The risk was great, but to refuse was to lose a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Rose, like many successful businessmen, was not prone to empty words. She knew exactly how to squeeze the company into a ring and force it to go in the right direction. Oleg began to realize that now he was in the very situation when he had to be ready for any turn of events. And at this moment his thoughts gave him no rest. He needed to meet Anna, the nurse from the hospital, who had said such strange words to him that day. He couldn't forget her warning, her quiet words that he was risking not only his health, but something more than just his physical condition. Oleg had pondered all these days what she meant, and why she had been so insistent on asking him to postpone the meeting. He had never believed in mysticism or the supernatural, but her words somehow still echoed in his mind. Anna wasn't the typical nurse who simply performed her duties. There was some kind of power in her gaze, hidden in her silent presence. This was the day he finally decided to meet her. Oleg left his office, headed for the elevator, and went down to the bottom floor of the hospital, where he had once been treated. The building, so familiar and frightening at the same time, seemed to preserve the memories of his weakness. He almost didn't notice as he walked past the same corridors where he felt more vulnerable and helpless than ever before. When he entered the ward, Anna was at her post. She was in her white coat as always, but today her gaze was different, full of expectation and wariness. She noticed him, and a faint smile appeared on her face. "Oleg," she said calmly as he approached her desk. "I was hoping you'd come." Oleg stood in front of her, not knowing where to begin. "Anna, I can't forget what you said to me the day I left the hospital," he began, and his voice was serious. "You said that I was risking not only my health, but something more. I want to understand what you meant by that. I can't get your words out of my head." Anna hesitated, as if weighing up what to say. "Oleg," she began, her voice was soft but with some heaviness. "I knew you when you were still young and full of ambition. You were the one who wanted to change the world. You didn't notice how much of what you were building was surrounded by lies and manipulation, did you? How you built everything on that, on false decisions and misguided priorities. You were always so confident in your abilities that you didn't notice how life was playing its games with you." Oleg felt how hard it became for him to breathe. He always believed that he was building his empire on the right principles. He was sure that his success was the result of his efforts and strategic thinking. But Anna's words began to raise doubts in him that he couldn't shake off. "You sound a little too cryptic," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I want to understand what you mean. Is it about my business, or is it something personal?" Anna looked at him with a slightly reproachful look, as if he had just discovered something obvious but did not notice it. "Everything is connected, Oleg. Everything you've built has a price. Not only have you lost your health, but you've lost the people who were once there for you. You always thought you could control everything, but you didn't see how life forced you down the wrong path. Your mistakes in your personal relationships also had an impact on what you're going through now." Oleg remained silent, trying to realize exactly what she wanted to tell him. He knew that she had something important that she didn't want to reveal right away, and he felt that this knowledge could change everything. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "You talk about personal mistakes, about some hidden mistakes in my life, but what does that mean to me now?" Anna sighed, and her gaze became softer. "Because you should know, Oleg, that what happened to your family was part of that very game. You didn't know that your mother, who was once your rock, had kept important things from you. You've been living with a false feeling all this time. You never knew she wasn't dead like you thought. I'm your daughter, Oleg." Those words shocked him. He didn't know what to say, didn't know how to take what he had just heard. His whole past, everything he knew, began to crumble. "What? Are you my daughter?" His voice was barely audible. Anna nodded, and her eyes filled with pain. "Yes, Oleg. I've wanted to tell you for a long time, but you weren't ready to hear the truth yourself. You were always too busy with your own affairs, too absorbed in your work. But now that you're at a crossroads, I want you to know, and maybe now you'll realize that not everything you've built has been right." Oleg stood as if he was hypnotized, unable to believe what he had just heard. He felt his world turning upside down, his past becoming something completely different. Oleg stood there, unable to believe what he had just learned. His thoughts were confused, and his heart was beating with such force that it seemed like it was about to leave his chest. He stared at Anna, her words thundering out of the blue, leaving him utterly confused. Everything he'd believed, everything that had seemed obvious to him, now seemed to fall apart like sand through his fingers. Are you my daughter?" Oleg asked again, though he realized it wouldn't change what he had just heard. Anna nodded, her eyes full of sadness and pain. She took a step forward as if she was trying to lighten the moment, but Oleg stepped back, not knowing how to take those words. He felt his world begin to crumble and the ground go out from under his feet. "You didn't know, did you?" she continued, her voice soft but firm. "Everything you knew about your mother was a lie. You thought she was dead, but in fact she'd gone hiding to escape the consequences. And now I'm here to explain to you why she did it." Oleg felt his heart clench. He couldn't understand why his mother had kept the truth from him, why everything was so carefully hidden. He was ready to throw himself into the investigation, to find answers, but he needed time to realize this shock. Why had she done this? "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" His voice sounded confused and tired. Anna sighed but didn't back down. She knew her words would change everything, but she was willing to tell the truth, despite the consequences. She didn't want you to be in the same situation she was in. She was involved with the people who ran your affairs, your fortune, and those people were far from what they appeared to be. When you were a kid, your mother tried to protect you from all of this, but every year, every step of the way, the situation became more complicated. Her deception was her way of protecting you from a world ruled by money and manipulation. Oleg felt everything inside him clench. These words, though understandable, sounded too harsh. He could not at once perceive that everything he had built could be not just the result of his labor, but part of a much more complex and dangerous game. "Are you saying she was hiding me from the truth, from who I really am?" His eyes searched for her anxiously. Anna didn't answer at once. She moved closer to him, so that their eyes met at the same level. "Yes, Oleg. She hid the truth about you because she didn't want you to be part of the world that destroyed her. You thought your successes were only your accomplishments, but they were actually part of a more complex game. Your mother didn't want you to be a part of it." Oleg took a deep breath, realizing that everything he thought was true was now in question. His whole life, his successes, his business, it all turned out to be part of a much more complex and secretive system. "I can't believe it was all around me," he said, his voice full of pain and bewilderment. "I thought I had built my life on the right principles, that everything I had achieved was the result of my efforts." Anna looked at him with compassion. "You were right when you said that everything you've achieved is the result of your efforts. But you didn't see how the world around you worked. You didn't see how people manipulate those who find success. You were trapped in a trap they set for you themselves. They used you, Oleg, and you were too busy being successful to see it." Oleg stepped back, not knowing how to continue this conversation. His world was crumbling before his eyes, and he could feel his confidence disappearing like sand through his fingers. "What am I supposed to do now?" he asked, not hiding his confusion. "How do I believe in people?" How do I trust the people I've worked with all these years? Anna looked at him with a hard look. You have to realize that not all people want to manipulate you, but there are those who build it all up and use it all. You can only change everything that happens to you if you start fighting for the truth, not for your success. You have to become honest with yourself and those around you. Oleg felt his heart begin to beat faster. This was not just a revelation about his life. It was a real revelation that could change not only his personal life, but his entire career. He realized that maybe his successes weren't as pure as he thought, and that now he had a choice to make. Are you saying I have to fight for the truth? How can I do that if I don't know who to trust? His voice got a little quieter. Anna moved closer to him and said quietly, I'll be with you, Oleg. We will solve all these mysteries together. I will help you see the truth, but only if you are ready to accept it. You must be ready to give up everything you know to start with a clean slate. Oleg felt his chest fill with a new sensation, a feeling he had long ago lost. He felt that now his life, his choices, depended only on him. He was ready to move forward, despite everything he had been through. Okay, he finally said with determination in his voice. I'm ready. Tell me what I need to do. Anna looked at him, and her eyes filled with hope. We start by tearing down the old system and building a new one. Are you ready for that, Oleg? Because it won't be the easy way. He nodded, realizing that he wouldn't be going backwards. He was ready for new challenges, ready to fight for the truth and for his own freedom. After Oleg made the decision to act, his life began to change rapidly. It was the moment when he realized that he could not continue to live by old habits and ignore the hidden threats that awaited him at every turn. He decided that it was time to stop being someone who simply answered the calls of fate. He became someone who made his own rules. But to do that, he needed to muster the strength to face a reality in which nothing was, as he was used to seeing it. Oleg and Anna began working on a plan. They gathered evidence, ferreted out hidden documents, and analyzed all the schemes that underpinned the business operations. Each day they went one step further, but each day brought new problems and obstacles. This was not just an investigation, but a real battle for truth, for justice, for getting back to the purity of his goals. He was willing to transcend his old connections, the people with whom he had shared successful moments in his life. And while it was hard for him to realize that many of them had played a part in his downfall, he understood that you can't win this fight unless you're willing to put it all behind you. Anna turned out to be more than just the daughter of his former lover. She was smart, determined, and ready to fight to the end. Her support was invaluable to Oleg. She knew that in this world, where everything is built on manipulation and lies, you have to be prepared for the worst. But her ability to see the truth, despite all the difficult circumstances, was what inspired Oleg. He realized that his life might begin to unfold on a new path if he acted decisively and didn't turn away from his goal. One evening, when they finally found information that could affect the outcome of their fight, Oleg decided to meet with Rose, who was still an important figure in their case. He knew that her involvement in the project could be crucial, but he also sensed that her game was more complicated than he had realized. His intuition said she knew more than she was saying, and perhaps she could be the right ally to be on his side at the right moment, or conversely, a dangerous adversary who couldn't be trusted. In the evening at the restaurant where they had agreed to meet, Oleg felt the tension between him and Rose growing by the minute. She was here, in this expensive place, with her calm, confident look, which he had already begun to take as a sign of hidden threat. Oleg, Rose smiled as he sat down at the table. I am pleased that you took the time to meet. Oleg looked at her with slight disbelief. Rose, I want you to speak frankly, he began, deciding not to stall. I know that there is more to your offer than just an investment, and I need to understand exactly what it is you want. Rose tilted her head slightly, her smile becoming even more enigmatic. You've always been so decided, Oleg, she replied with a slight hint of admiration, but I have already told you that my goal is not only to earn money on this project. My interest is to see how you will cope with the obstacles that I have prepared for you. You didn't think it would be so easy, did you? Oleg felt his heart beat faster. He knew that her words were not empty threats. Rose was really playing her game. She was testing him, testing how willing he was to go all the way. I didn't come here to be tested, he said, holding back his irritation. I came here to find out whose side you're on. You don't want to ruin my business, right? Rose looked at him with interest, her eyes beginning to twinkle as if she had found something new in his words that she was interested in exploring. You're right, Oleg, she said after a short pause. I don't want to ruin your business. I want you to see how difficult it will be to fight those who are really behind this world. All I'm doing is testing your ability to survive in an environment where trust is the most valuable thing you can have. Her words made him wonder. He'd always thought she was just an ambitious businesswoman, but now he was beginning to realize that her goals were much deeper than that. And if he wanted to win, he had to understand what she was really trying to say. I'm ready, Oleg said, not looking away from her gaze. But I need you to tell me more. What exactly is going on behind the scenes? Rose sighed and seemed to take a step forward, as if finally decided to reveal what she kept secret. You must realize, Oleg, that not everything in your business is under your control. Your partners, your old friends, those with whom you built this empire, have their own agendas. They're not interested in your success, they're interested in theirs, and if you're not careful, they'll simply destroy everything you've built. Oleg felt his eyes narrow. He had always known that there were people around him who were willing to manipulate, but now he was beginning to realize that his enemies were much closer than he had thought. This wasn't just a fight for business, it was a fight for his own future. I know who they are, he said, feeling his resolve grow stronger, and I'll do whatever it takes to regain control. Rose smiled. Now I believe that you are ready to fight, Oleg, but remember, it won't be easy. Oleg nodded. He knew they had a long and dangerous road ahead of them, but now he was ready for any turn of events.